Welcome to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. I'm Amra Pajalic, writer, teacher and storyteller. Pull up a chair and let's dive into stories about writing, life and lessons learned, sharing wisdom from my armchair to yours. You can find the episode show notes, your free episode handouts and my how-to guides at amrapajalic.com/podcast. And now it's time to dive in. Welcome to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. Today I'm interviewing Koraly Dimitriadis. She's a Cypriot Australian poet, filmmaker, freelance writer and founder of Outside the Box Press. She's actually the one who gave me the idea to start my own imprint. Yes, you're full of good ideas.
Wow.
Her breakout collection, Love and Fuck Poems, became a bestseller, so we've got it there. Translated into Greek, was longlisted for the UK Poetry Book Awards, and in 2025 won Best Book of Narrative Poetry at the Legacy Book Awards. She followed it with Just Give Me the Pills and She's Not Normal, cementing her reputation as one of Australia's boldest poetic voices. Koraly's short story collection, The Mother Must Die, was published by Puncher and Whatman in 2024, and her opinion writing, of which there are over 160 pieces, have appeared in The Guardian, The Age, Al Jazeera, The Washington Post and more. She's also a filmmaker and her poetry films have screened on SBS On Demand, at the Sydney Opera House, international festivals, have earned multiple awards including the Monologues and Poetry International Film Festival at the USA. She's a fearless creative. She moves between the page and the stage and screen, uses her art and small business platform to challenge taboos, celebrate identity and inspire women to speak the truth. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So you are someone that I have been incredibly inspired by, I just have to tell you.
Wow.
Because you have really forged your own path. You have really created your own artistic journey and just pursued what your art is and just let it speak for itself. So could you take us back a little bit and tell us about your, the beginning for you?
Yeah, well, I always wanted to be an artist, but I wasn't really allowed to pursue it because I had very kind of strict migrant parents. But when I got older and after I had my daughter, something inside me snapped and I just decided to pursue my dream. Mm-hmm. And it came with poetry. The poetry became kind of like the liberation, but I was also writing a novel in secret before that is still not published, but will be published one day, I'm sure. And I just noticed when I came onto the art scene that while I was feeling very repressed by my culture and I saw art or the art sector as my liberation, I very quickly became aware that I was trying to be, that powers were trying to silence me, were not being appreciative of the way I was writing, were frowning at the way I was writing and that it wasn't like proper literary standards. And so when I wanted to publish Love and F poems, I didn't even send it to publishers. I just did it on my own as a zine, and then it started selling very well, and then I turned it into a book and I started Outside the Box Press. And I think I fluctuated through my whole career of trying to appease the establishment and wasted a lot of time trying to do that, waiting years and years for publishers to get back to me about my poetry books and then getting rejected, and then just realizing that my books weren't getting published at the time that I wanted them to be published. So I made a decision in the last few years to only publish my poetry through my own press and not to send it to publishers. But with my other books like fiction, I'm still pursuing those avenues. And I still work with industry, but because I have my own press with its own distribution, in a way I'm not answerable to industry because I always have that to fall back on. Even for my fiction, if at the end of the day I can't find a publisher, I will do it through my press. And so having that power to fall back on my own press has made me, not as scared to say what I want to say and do what I want to do. However, having said that, it does still come as a price when you say things that the establishment don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think many people realise, but for those of us who've been on the publishing scene, it is quite a small scene. Everyone kind of knows each other. You get known around by people, and there is certain expectations in terms of writing and publishing and perception and presenting yourself. And I think that when we come from a multicultural background, our themes and the things that we write about are just, they're normal to us. This is what we write about. These are the people that we know. And then there's this perception of, it's gritty writing, it's these things. And so sometimes that can be the difficult thing.
Yeah, and I would say, because I do a lot of touring thanks to funding from the Cypriot government, and I spend a lot of time in Europe and Cyprus, and the more time I spend there, like for example, recently I went to a poetry event in Cyprus, and all the poets that were performing had a similar style or rawness to their poetry. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking, it's the colonial powers here that say that our writing doesn't meet literary merit, because their perception of literary merit is a colonial perception. And actually my writing stems from my ancestry, because the poets that I'm around in Cyprus are writing like me. And so, when you submit to prizes and publishers and all that, and you see this term, in Australia, I'm talking now, because in Australia, our sector is very removed from the rest of the world. In Europe, it's a completely different perception. So when you're here and you see that term, we only accept manuscripts of the highest literary merit, you go, no, what you're saying to me is you accept manuscripts through a colonial lens of writing, and you're not going to publish me because I don't sound like that. And I'm not going to go to university and be taught to write like that, because that's what they do. They teach you this is the proper way to write, which is a colonial way to write. And I'm not saying that other cultures don't get published. They do, but it's a very tokenistic view. Oh, we've got to have our from this culture and that culture. And, well, the Greeks have had their days, so, we don't have to choose someone from that culture. And so that's how they view their literary merit. It's very colonial and tokenistic.
And that's because, let's be honest here, who are the people who are working in the publishing industry? What background? There's not enough diversity there, because it is not accessible for people. These days, for anyone to get a job as an editor, which is becoming harder and more thankless because there is constriction in the industry, there's the expectation of doing unpaid internships. Who can afford to do that? You and me wouldn't have been able to afford to do that. We were out there, very early on in our lives, working, having to pay mortgages, and so it's very limiting about who can access those opportunities and who has the ability to kind of keep pushing through some of those hurdles.
And not just that as well, but the people that they choose to be these editors, and that they're people that are conducting themselves in a way that the establishment likes. They're not going to put me, as an editor, for example, of an established literary journal, because I don't conduct myself the way a good literary citizen in Australia should conduct themselves. So it's also that in that way as well, these positions of power, who are they putting there?
Yeah, and there's also just the reality of, because I have a lot of friends who are also of Anglo-Celtic background who are writing crime fiction novels, and just the way that the industry, even then, some of them are best-selling authors, and they don't hear from their editors, they don't get told about things that are going on, just because of the fact that publishing houses are underfunded. They've got so many books coming through, and then there are certain people who become, the bestsellers and develop those long and deep relationships, and then there's just the reality on the ground of these days, the publishing industry.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what I was saying, because yes, like maybe when I started my career 15 years ago, the industry was more better funded,
Yes.
and there were more opportunities. Now we're just seeing a shrinking of the arts as a whole around the world. We're getting more censorship in the arts as well than there ever has been before. And because, you know, if I only look at America, for example, we get a lot of, you know, the ways that we do things in Australia, we get a lot of that from America. So we're getting a culmination of this, what we were talking about before, and the way the industry works. Plus, on top of that now, the realities of being in the arts, underfunded, censored. It's, you know, I really do feel for the newer generation coming through in this space. And, you know, I mentor a lot of writers, younger writers as well. And I don't want to be one of those teachers that doesn't say what the realities are. I have to say what the realities are. I don't want to waste people's time. I wasted a lot of my time trying to figure all this stuff out, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying don't go into the arts if that's what you want to do, but being aware of the realities. But there's also a lot of opportunity for you if, you know, you think outside the box, as an artist should.
And that's the thing. We have both. Like, I had a beautiful apprenticeship to the publishing industry, where my first book, I did not realise how hard it was, because I submitted my first book to a prize, the Victorian Premier's Prize for an unpublished manuscript. I got shortlisted. I got publishers giving me their business cards at the ceremony, because they used to do these beautiful, amazing ceremonies and announcements and stuff. I got top agent, you know, Curtis Brown. I had my agent submit it to 5 publishers. I had 2 offers.
Wow.
Got published, had beautiful reviews. Global financial crisis happened and splat went.
And what year was that?
2009.
Yeah, so, think about that and what the situation is
that
now.
Was so long ago now. And then it kind of just got harder and harder, and I still got traditionally published, but it just got to a point where, like you, all this time spent waiting and giving other people our intellectual property, not having control, facing constraints. It became, and also I was getting rights back to books that I had published. And I was like, well, may as well. And now I am personally of the view, and I think you agree with me, that being an independently published author is the only way to get a viable income as an artist these days, because even if you are traditionally published, you get very small advances, and only do you earn royalties if you've paid back those advances. I wanted to pick up something that you were talking about earlier, which is that you had your own distribution for your books. And that's the thing, when you are an indie author, you have to take on board all of the marketing, all of the distribution, all of the business side of it. So could you talk us through how this evolved and where it's at and some lessons?
So I have worked with publicists. So I've hired publicists occasionally. They are expensive. I was lucky early in my career. I had some publicists that wanted to work with me and believed in what I was doing and did it like a cheaper rate. I don't think these days that's possible with the high cost of living. But the way that I got a distributor, so I've got a national distributor for Australia, New Zealand, Woodslane, was that, my poetry book, Love and F Poems, I just put it in like 1 or 2 bookshops, and especially with the bookshop Polyester Books on Brunswick Street, it doesn't exist anymore, but they were just selling a lot of the books. And so I then went to other bookshops and said, oh, look, this bookshop is selling out of my books. Can you order my books? And then they just kind of become jealous of each other. Like, oh, that bookshop's got it. Well, maybe I should get it. And then, it just started like a chain reaction of, and, have a huge spreadsheet to keep a track of all my books and who had my books and this and that. And then I was able to take that data to distributors, and there are only, I think, like 10 distributors in Australia, and I tried them all and they all said no, except for Wood Slang, who was like, oh, we don't even do poetry, but there's something about you, we'll give it a go. And you only need one person sometimes to say yes, and always remember that. That's one of the things I teach my students all the time. You only need one person to say yes. And they've been distributing my books for like over 10 years now. They're very supportive of my work, and they're also started up a publishing press as well. So they've gone from distributor and publisher to publisher as well. It's they're not like, they're more of an academic distributor than a literary distributor. Like the literary distributors, well, I'm not literary. How can Love and F poems be literary? So I went with an academic, distributor, and it worked out.
And also one of the things that you did was you actually, so there's two ways that we can do printing and publishing as independent authors. We can do the on-demand through Ingram Spark, which means a higher cost per book.
Yes.
Or you can do offset printing, where you print a few thousand copies and the unit price for each one is much cheaper. And so that's what you did with the distributor, so you were able to... Do you still do that, or what's the process now?
Now that print on demand is actually relatively on par with offset, actually. So it is a bit cheaper to go offset, and I have done multiple print runs. I could do with the offset I was doing, I could do 600 copies. And I've done quite a few print runs that way, but in the last few years print on demand has just worked better for me because I tour a lot. So what that means is if I'm in Cyprus, I can print my books in Europe and get them shipped to me, rather than do a print run of say 600, have them delivered to Australia, and then have to take them overseas. It just doesn't suit me anymore now with all the traveling I have to do. I mean, even if like say I've got a gig in Germany, which I did, I just printed books and sent them right to the gig, so that reduces my costs of having to post.
Yeah, because
books.
It's local printing, local postage.
Yeah.
And we know that sending anything from Australia is so expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing a memory of when speaking your truth got you in trouble, but you knew you had to stand by it. But if you're not okay with it, that's okay.
Look, I mean, speaking my truth has been a journey in and of itself, because there have been times where I've spoken my truth and I've gotten blacklisted, and and the first time I got really blacklisted, it really affected my mental health. And it stopped me from writing what I wanted to write for a really long time. And I've got a lot of poetry that I just never showed anyone, that I feel will come up in my next poetry collection, which is about it's called That's What They Do, and it's about emotional abuse, but all the different ways a person can experience emotional abuse, one of which is through their workplace. And but after I went through that experience, I just know I came to this point where I was like, Koraly, either give up or do what you want to do, because this in between space was hell. It was like, kind of writing but not writing what I want to write, and trying to appease but being scared. And so I just made a decision that I'm just going to go for it, because I had already had that scar, that X on me. So and now when I publish things that I know are controversial, I'm not as scared. And if I do publish something that I think, maybe I shouldn't have said that, I might take it down and then reflect on it, and then think, I don't want to say that because I can't be bothered with the backlash of it. you know, because at the end of the day, I'm a human and I have to worry about my own mental health. So when people look at me and think, oh, she's such a fearless writer, I actually don't say a lot. And it's not because I don't want to say it and I won't ever say it. It just means right at that point, I don't feel comfortable saying it, but it might come up in a book in a year or 2 or 3. And that's what I teach my students. It's sometimes it's not the right time to say what you want to say, but that doesn't mean you never have to say it.
And that's the joy of the artistic life. We just keep collecting things, collecting and writing and having things. And then, as you said, it's eventually like, well, this is going to be the body of work.
Yes.
This is going to be the theme that it sort of evolves under and develops under. I think we've spoken before also, in terms of your freelance writing, you've got over 160 pieces published, but you actually were getting published overseas more than you were getting published in Australia, and that's how you sort of built up your body of work.
Yeah, I think I was published in Australia more, but I think when I started getting those runs on the board overseas, that helped me get more stuff published in Australia, because in Australia there's this, it's really bad, but there's this, the industry operates in this way of like, oh, well, she's getting runs on the board overseas, so we better publish her here. But if I didn't have those runs on the board, then maybe I wouldn't have got those opportunities here. So there's that to consider as well. And it's a reality of the Australian publishing industry or media industry, because I think we're so far removed from the rest of the world that if someone somehow makes a splash overseas, then they must be good. So yeah, but these days actually I don't really publish opinion, and that's because the media has changed so much in the last few years. The last few times I've been published by mainstream media, I just haven't been happy with the result, because they edit me, they cut things without even asking me, and then I end up with this article that isn't a reflection of what I wanted to say. And so now I've moved over to social media, mainly TikTok and Instagram, mostly TikTok, to just make videos about my views, because then I can just say what I want to say. And yes, I'm not getting paid, but I'm also increasing my platform, which means I'm selling books as well. And it's not as much money as getting published in the media, but for me, I don't care. I would rather make money teaching and say what I want to say. And that makes me happy. I spent so many years of my life in a very repressive kind of culture, married at 22 and, not feeling able to say what I want to say. So as an adult now, I just think, well, life is too short. And if I'm going to be an artist, I want to do it my way and I want to say what I want to say.
Yeah, like what you're talking about, I'm very pragmatic. When I get things published and they edit, I just accept all. I don't care. I'm like, paycheck. Yeah. And so it's like you really have to decide where is your energy, which is, is it about like what you're wanting to say, and the fact that once it's being paid for, there is that compromise that comes into it. There is that censorship that comes into it, the lens that it sort of needs to fit. Like you, I'm slowly sort of moving away from wanting that too. Where it's like it's about that freedom and about where's the opportunities, where do you want to put the energy?
Yeah, and also I found it demoralizing, because I found that a lot of the times the editors make me feel like there's something wrong with me, like I'm somehow not writing properly because I'm not pitching ideas or saying things the way they want me to say it. But really, if you look at it more closely, the media has been, compromised in the last at least 5 years. I remember when I first started writing opinion, I was getting like 3 articles published a week and I was just saying whatever I wanted to say. Now they make you feel like, oh, there's something wrong with your writing, that's why you're not getting published. Yes. No, it's not that. And for a while I thought it was that, and then I was like, no, hang on a minute. Like the media is so compromised, and I've been saying it for years and years and years, and now we're seeing it clearly how it's compromised. We can see it clearly. So
the backlash and the censorship that's happening. And, if we look at the Bendigo Writers Festival and all of the authors, I'm so proud of them, who were given these agreements that they were supposed to sign about what they would say and what they would talk about on stage, and refused because enough's enough.
Yeah.
And there's finally that acknowledgement. But even with publishing, I agree with you, because I was experiencing the same thing where I would be submitting books that I really believed in and that I'd spent time on, and it just wasn't getting anywhere. And so the first few years would be like, it's me, these books aren't good, they're not worth it. And then in some instances, things would get published elsewhere, or extracts would get published elsewhere, and I'm like, well, is it really not good? Or is it just not fitting, what perception is, or what's popular, or what they think it's selling at the time? And now I've gotten to the point where I don't even submit anymore to the traditional publishing scene, because what we were talking about earlier in terms of the contracts that they ask you to sign, you're giving away world rights, even though they might not be exploiting your world rights. They'll only be publishing it in Australia and maybe New Zealand. And so you're giving up rights that then you can't exploit. And it's like, if we publish it on demand, we will get a few sales overseas, depending on our marketing efforts, but there will be some people buying it overseas. And that is so amazing when you see it on your Ingram Spark dashboard, where it's like, oh, someone in France bought a copy of my book. Oh my gosh, someone in Germany did. These things are just so exciting and so heartening.
Yeah.
And so, it's again that compromise of, do you want someone who does all of the work for you, all of that social marketing and production, and therefore you give up your, autonomy and opportunities, and they have to sort of do all of that, or the other side of it. So
look, these days you don't have to sign world rights, but usually it's expected. With Puncher and Watman, they have my Australian, New Zealand rights, and Outside the Box Press has the European rights.
Wonderful.
That wasn't something that they wanted at the start, but that's something that's what it's resulted in, because it just wasn't feasible if I'm touring so much to have to get books from Puncher and Watman shipped from Australia to Europe when I can just print them in Europe, like I said before. But also I would caution new writers as well to, when they are going to sign with a publisher, really ask what kind of marketing budget are they going to actually put forward for your book, because with Puncher and Watman, for example, there really wasn't a budget, and but with bigger publishers there is a budget, so there's also that to weigh up. I wanted to be published with a publisher because that's something I wanted to experience. I'd never done it before. So, and it's turned out okay. There's been some pros and some cons, but I don't regret it. So, definitely be looking at the marketing, because a lot of publishers these days, they don't even have proper distribution even. They won't even get your book in a bookshop. So if you're looking at a publisher, you need to go, okay, are there books at my local bookshop? And what kind of distribution do they have? What kind of marketing do they have? But then when you ask those questions, when you get to the point of getting published, it's almost seen as like disrespectful, like, oh, how dare you ask for that or this, you know? You should be thankful we chose you from a slush pile of 200 books and this and that, and it shouldn't be that way, you know?
It should be viewed as a partnership.
Yeah.
But, because I had that experience too when I tried to negotiate.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're cut out so much in one way, where it's like, well, it should be a partnership.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, everything that we're doing, it's about promoting, it's about creating opportunities. But it's almost like, you've just got the spotlight for 6 weeks, moving on, and whatever they control. Even like I remember, I'm not going to say the author's name, but they got published with a traditional publisher.
A big one? Like,
yeah,
or
a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the 5.
Yeah.
And they were doing promotion and all of this. And then the publisher got their nose bent out of joint about their promotion efforts and what they were doing. And they were like, this author is out of bounds in their promotion.
No way, I've never heard of that before.
It was really, really...
so they had to do the promotion like how the publisher wanted them to do it?
Yeah, there was something about the publisher not being happy about what they were doing and the ways that they were promoting, and so it does limit.
I didn't know that. They definitely wouldn't be happy with me.
If I could do an episode one day of all of the dark stories I know,
me
of
too.
all the little dark nooks and because there is a lot that goes on. I mean, I think it's in every industry, like even as a teacher, there's the dark side of it all. That you kind of just look away from because you're like, okay, we can't look there.
Yeah.
But can you talk about some of the promotion and marketing that you've been doing, and like what things have you found the most successful? Because even recently you've been submitting to book prizes, and you won book prizes, which has been creating more opportunities for you.
Yeah, I mean with book prizes, it's a bit of a hit and miss. Like I don't really submit that much to prizes unless I think there's a chance. Like I always look at what kind of books get chosen, and if it's a very literary kind of list and nothing really edgy, I don't even submit. Or if the judges are very literary, I don't submit. So, but with American Book Fest, which is where I've had some luck, and the UK Poetry Book Awards, I could see that they were, choosing people that were a bit left of centre, so that's why I submitted there. I found like social media very helpful. Like I said before, sometimes I work with publicists, but also just touring, and leaving Australia, which I know it's not easy for a lot of people to do, but I've been lucky because I'm a dual citizen. I get funding from the Cypriot government to do a lot of my touring. Like they've funded me to go to New Zealand, to America, around Europe, to Cyprus. So, and that support has been absolutely pivotal to my success because of that thing I told you about before about how the Australian establishment views you more highly if you're kicking goals overseas. And so, the way that Cyprus funding is awarded is a bit more lax, I would say, and a bit more like not as bureaucratic. Like if you look at the funding guidelines here for Creative Australia and Creative Victoria, for someone that doesn't have that bureaucratic kind of head, it's almost impossible to get funding.
Those applications are hard.
Yeah, it's
like you have to start very early on, preparing the information, collecting, justifying, writing, and then the word count.
Yeah, it's just very inaccessible, and also the way that it's the funding is chosen, I don't think is very fair. Like that it's peer based, because then if the people on the board don't like you, then you're not going to get the funding. Whereas in Cyprus, it's not just peer based. There's actually people from the office that are sitting there as well, and I've had more luck. I've had more luck overseas, so I've just been able to just use that to my advantage to really lift my profile, and just perform at events around Europe and things like that. And I was recently in Berlin. I'd never performed in Berlin before, and I got such a warm reception just talking about all this stuff that we're talking about right now. They were just so fascinated because there's this perception in Europe that Australia is this very liberated, artistic, space, and it's just not. I'm like, no, it's more conservative than it is here, And I remember one day I said to someone in Cyprus, I'm going to write a poem about, it was something in the media, I'm going to write a poem about this and put it out there. What do you think? And they were like, why are you even asking me this question? Isn't it your job to do that? And I said, no, but if I said something like that in Australia, I would get, blacklisted or whatever. And they're like, that's so weird. Why would you get blacklisted? Like, they don't even understand when you talk about this stuff. They don't get it. So yeah, just to answer your question, I the way that I promote my work is very creatively driven. So it's like what feels right for me right now, and I just go with that because there's so many different ways a person can promote their work.
And that's the thing. That's what's been fascinating about being in this world now and seeing the ways that people are creating their own successes and creating their own paths. Can you talk through some lessons and logistics about touring and how and, in terms of advice or things that have happened? Like, do you come up with, or you look at events that you can go to? How do you?
Yeah, I just kind of, in the same way that I mentioned before about the prizes, like I'll try and source events that would program people like me. Like I don't really approach places where I don't think they're going to accept me because I don't want to waste my time. So yeah, there's a little bit of research that goes into it, and also people that I know come to me and say to me, oh, you should apply to this because I think you'd be really great there. So, I do take on people's feedback in that way as well. And yeah, if someone gave me a bit of advice recently that I thought was good, don't try and force yourself into spaces that won't appreciate you.
Yes.
And I think that has been a harder lesson for me to learn because I've always been like, well, why? Why can't I get there? And why can't I be in that literary festival? And why? And then when that person said that to me, I was like, yeah, I know I'm not going to be appreciated. So why do I even try?
Yes.
Like when I tell people overseas, like my poetry is like best selling for the poetry genre in Australia and I've never been invited to Melbourne Writers Festival.
Yeah.
Or like I've never been invited to any of the like writers festivals,
And a lot of those festivals are by publishers, the known publishers, creating where they invite you. So I've been on some of those festivals when I've been published with, traditional publishing. I've got one festival coming up which is based on who I knew. And, so there is a lot of that where it's like people that you know and people that you created networks with, and that you generate that through. Yeah. But also, look, what you were saying in terms of researching, like even if you are wanting to traditionally publish, you need to research the agent, or if you're going with the agent or the editor or what they've published. Yeah. So it's the same thing in the indie world. There is a lot of that background stuff that you have to do.
Yeah, and I've also done stuff like, it doesn't exist anymore, but Sexpo.
Yeah.
I used to do Sexpo where it would just be like, loads of like booths about sex, and then, there was only me and this one other writer that was selling our books there. And I got a lot of books sold, a lot of email addresses, I have a mailing list and stuff. And just doing like book fairs or markets I've done sometimes, places where, people that I know would be interested in my work go to, just thinking outside the box. We don't have to market our books the way, the publishers do. We can actually come up with creative ways. Even once I was selling my books, I don't anymore, in like a fashion store that, had a lot of like, say, Greek women that I knew went there, or, just trying different things and seeing what works and what doesn't. Because sometimes, you could put your book in like a certain gift store that, that people that, would like your book go to, and you can try it out and see how it goes. And, it could do really well. It could flop. I guess one of the things you have to do is try things out and don't take it to heart if it doesn't work out. Because a lot of the times people look at me and go, oh, she's so successful and whatever, but they don't see that, for every success, there's probably like, 10 to 20 like flops is what I call them. Like I don't call them failures anymore, because I see those as stepping stones to me having my success. And the way you talk to yourself as a writer, that is kind of self-made, is really important, because the industry has its voice that will tell you, oh, look at her, she's just doing blah 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 blah, and she and just frowning on you for the way you're doing it. And it's easy to take on that voice, but when I started saying to myself, no, don't take on that voice, that's the establishment's voice. Your voice should be like, it's great that you tried that and it didn't work out. Try this maybe, try that, And it's so interesting as well, because my novel that I was talking to you about before, that has been rejected from, every publisher in Australia, right? And I know it's going to get published one day. I just know, and I know why it hasn't, because it's really controversial. But when I was in Cyprus recently, I was having discussions with producers and the Cypriot funding bodies about turning this novel that has never been published into a film. And it's like, I was sitting there going, how is this possible? Or even like when I was in London talking to a London theatre about my theatre show, and I can't even get it staged here, and there's interest. And I just go, wow, like it's so interesting that I can't have that support here and I have to go like abroad to get it.
No, I've heard that story before from a traditionally published author who was entering the film scene, and she was saying the same thing where she started, getting things adapted and scripts, and she's like, it's so much more collaborative, it's so much more open to ideas, it's a lot more like things can happen, and she was finding exactly the same thing, which is very different. And I don't know, is it the fact that, as writers, it's all about that solitary pursuit, and therefore, but then again, in the publishing industry, and, even for us getting our own books produced and published and printed, there is a lot of involvement and a lot of people, and we create our own ecosystem in terms of editors, and I've done audiobooks and narrators, and you've done movies, and so people were doing the film production, and so there is an industry that we're creating and that we're participating in, but somehow it does feel a little bit more boxed.
Yeah, no, I think when you think more broadly that you are an artist in your own right and you can do whatever you want and collaborate with whoever you want, and it doesn't have to be through that Australian literary canon. It can dabble in there, sure, dabble in there if you want. And that's great. It's good to have some collaboration there as well. But you are a free agent, and that is what an artist is. An artist, which is what I learn a lot when I go to Cyprus, when people tell me, but you're an artist, it's your job. It's your job to question, it's a job. And it's like, oh no, not in Australia, it's not my job. It's my job to be a good literary citizen. That's my job. And when you start thinking in that more broader way, that actually it is my job to question, it is my job to conduct myself as an artist in a way that feels comfortable for me creatively. Like almost like your creativity dictates where you go, who you collaborate with.
Yes.
And being empowered in that approach of what feels right for me as an artist and as a human, then you start saying that you don't have to box yourself in.
Yes.
And
I have to say that's what's been happening for me since I've entered the indie world, and I've started just creating things and releasing them. And I get these ideas where I'm like, that the first instinct is, who am I to think that I can do this?
That's the establishment talking.
Yes. Yeah. And so then I have to go through and go, but then it almost, the more that you do it, it almost becomes a force within you.
Yes.
Where it's like, no, this is the voice of, truth, of I have something to say, I want to create this, I want to put it out there. And then even I have conversations, with people who are outside and who are not artists, and they're like, but why? What are you going to get out of it? Is it going to earn you an income? Is it going to... And I'm like, I don't know. I just need to do it. I just believe in it. I just feel that this is something I have to do and put out there into the world. And what I love is that the more that I'm listening to my voice, the more that I'm following my ideas, my muse, my passion, the easier it is, because that first, it's fighting yourself, it's fighting all of the voices of the people out there. And then the more that you release things, and the more that you also like talk about things to people, where you just have conversations, oh, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing this project, I'm doing this podcast. I started it for a purpose, which is to get runs on the board to do a history podcast that I want to do to showcase the research for my PhD and the background research for my book. And then, now I talk to people and they have interesting stories, and I'm like, podcast, and just kind of organically evolves, and it's not so much work. But the more that you censor yourself and the more that you close yourself off, the harder it is to be able to do that. The more, I'm finding such freedom and joy. And some of those things that you were talking about going to bookstores and the way that you got your books in your bookstores, I haven't been able to do that. That's still something that I have not been able to kind of like, I can do that. So I've still got some internal resistance to certain things, but I'm building that muscle. I'm building that resilience. So it's like you're fighting yourself, and then eventually...
Well, that's great. And I would say that it's like when we come into the industry, it's like we get indoctrinated to think in a certain way, and we have to unlearn that thinking.
Yes. I agree.
And it's really great seeing like your journey, because, when I met you, you were like just traditionally published and that, and then you told me you're going to open your own press, and you said that I'd inspired you. Actually, a lot of people say, you inspire me to do this. It's a lot of pressure sometimes.
No, but the thing is, you're not doing it for anyone but yourself. And what I have seen with you that is the bigger inspiration is this, just the joy of creation.
Yeah.
Because, if we go back to success, what is success?
Yes.
Is success money? Is it earning an income from your writing? Is success producing what you believe in and just putting it out there? What is success? And I think for both of us, we are arriving at that point where success is being true to ourselves, creating, and just putting it out there.
And also like a writer once told me something which has always stuck with me, which is separating your money from your art. It gives you so much more creative control. And I think when they say success is about, artistic success is supposed to be when you're making your money from your art. But I think that needs to be shifted a bit. It should be you're successful when you can make the art you want to make and you're making a living at the same time. Now, where that living is coming from could be coming from an investment property, could be coming from, like teaching a couple of days a week. But as long as you're doing what you want to do creatively,
yes.
Who cares where your money comes from?
Yes. And I agree with that, because I'm a teacher, and that is the living part of it. And then that creates that space where I don't have to rely on trying to make my art commercially viable.
Yes.
My art can just be what it needs to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Look, I've been wanting to talk to you, just get some of your perspective and get your lessons. Just everything that you said, I feel like I am slowly evolving, but you have been like this champion who has done it all herself and who has just blazed this path. So I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
For that. But I just want to thank you also just for being so generous, where we have been reaching out to each other and sharing and just helping. And it's just so wonderful to have someone with that. And even we're doing some events together, aren't we? We're doing
yes.
Australia Book Fair.
Yeah, the Australian Book Fair, we're going to be there together.
We're going to be there together in January, and we're looking maybe at doing Clunes together also.
Yes, maybe, yes.
But we need to see. So I'm really excited about those opportunities too, because that's something else that I've wanted to do that I've been really struggling with. So I'm going to have you to usher me into it.
Yeah, no, it's great. The book fair world is definitely something that self-made authors should definitely tap into. Yeah, because you're selling directly to the consumer rather than relying on like a book festival or a bookshop to sell your work. And it can also be really rewarding because you're actually having conversations with the people that are buying your work.
Yes.
And that is something that we don't get when we're selling, at a bookshop, for example,
Yes.
So, it's definitely something that I enjoy doing.
I love how you are able to like spin everything in a positive way, because like for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, being out there and talking to people.
Well, it's so interesting see, because a lot of the time with these book fairs and that, you get authors that are like, you know, coming up to me and they're like, oh, you know, I'm not selling, you know. And I just say, that's okay, because, you know, you're even like if you're not selling, the fact that you're there and that people, they might walk past your table and see your book and they might pick it up and not buy it, right? But they might pick it up and buy it the next time they see it, you know? And so every time people always come to me complain, I'm like, it's okay. The fact that you're here and that you're marketing your work and you're talking to your audience, your potential audience, that is still, it's still marketing. Like people pay money for publicists and all that, but you're there doing the groundwork. I see myself as a grassroots writer. I don't see myself as like, oh, you know, I've made it and I'm too snobby to go to this or that. Or, I don't see myself that way. And I know the establishment might go, oh, well, look at her. She has to go to a book fair to sell her books. And I just say, well, why do you care so much how I'm selling my book? Are you selling books? How much do you pay to sell your books? How much do you pay a publicist to sell your books?
Yeah.
You know, and you're frowning at me, you know. And even I just want to say one thing about the Bendigo Writers Festival, and I know that, you know, a lot of people actually, you know, pulled out of that festival, and that's fine, they have every right to do that. But the idea that the ones that didn't pull out are somehow bad writers, I don't agree with that. And I know that some of the writers that didn't pull out were crucified online, and I don't agree with that at all.
Yes.
I support writers in whatever they want to do, and to actually get a spot at the Bendigo Writers Festival, I've never been invited, you know, so to actually have that spot is a privilege in itself. To be able to pull out is also a privilege as well. So I don't agree with any kind of conduct that crucifies people that didn't pull out. It's their choice, you know, to do that or not. And I just want to add that, you know, I don't frown at people whether they pulled out or not pulled out, you know.
And that's what artistic freedom is.
That's what it should be.
You stand, you know, you have to make decisions for yourself.
Yes.
In terms of what is right for you at that time, and it's not for other people to sit there questioning, deciding, judging.
Or blacklisting, which is what happens.
Yeah, and I think social media is not a place for nuance.
Yes.
You know, it is something that benefits us and we enjoy it, and we know that we, you know, it works in terms of promoting our work and promoting ourselves, but there's no nuance, and there is a lot of
nastiness.
Yeah, there can be.
And I've experienced a lot of nastiness online in my career, and I didn't deserve it. Yeah. You know, and neither do others.
No one deserves it.
Yeah.
But it does, like, I do know what you're talking about, because I do think about what I'm going to wade into, what I'm going to post.
Yes.
And then for me, there's another layer, which is as a teacher.
Yes,
and,
for
you
sure,
know, young adults. So there's that part of it also, but you know, it is also a joy.
Yes.
I do like social media, and I do I do connect with people on social media and create friendships and collaborations. Yeah. So
I think that being an artist and a writer is a very hard profession.
Yes.
I've worked in IT, and I've gone and I've worked and I've gotten my paycheck and I've gone home, and no, it's not hard. This is hard. Yeah. This is hard. It's very hard on so many different levels to be an artist, and I hope people understand that it is very difficult. It's a very difficult profession. And actually, a writer I admire once said to me, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And so when I'm having those hard days, I always think that, well, if it was easy, everyone would do it, and I'm doing it, and I should be proud of the fact that I'm doing it.
Well, that's, for me, my success has been that I have achieved longevity. Yes. That 20 years of, you know, trying, actually 28 years probably, of, you know, publishing and working at it, I'm still doing it. But having said that, I have no choice. It is my oxygen.
Yes, me too, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing about being an artist. You can't not do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Koraly. I hope you've enjoyed this chat, and you can connect with Koraly online and check out her work. She is amazing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow for more insights, stories and inspiration. From my armchair to yours, remember, every story begins with a single word.